Yo, what up? It's Raphael with NBA Draft Junkies. This is, I want to say, my fourth opportunity to where I had extended the opportunity for different subscribers or guests to come on the channel or the podcast to talk about either their big board or their mock lottery. It's a little early in the morning. I had a late night, not from partying, just watching the Clippers
Yep.
squander a 3-1 lead, and
Yep.
just kind of keeping up with all the social media slander that was going on Twitter or whatever. So I didn't go to bed till super late, but it's still a pleasure to get up early and to talk basketball. Nothing else I'd rather be doing at this early in the morning. So my guest for today, Derek.
What's going on? My name's Derek Praschak. I got a blog if anyone wants to check out, tailgatetake.com, and I'm excited to be here.
All right, glad to have you on. Thanks for reaching out to me. And today we're going to talk about your mock lottery. Minnesota Timberwolves have the number one pick. Who is the best option for the Wolves?
Well, if we're talking for the Wolves, it's kind of tough, but I think it's tough to pass on Anthony Edwards with the first pick. I'm not entirely sold that he'll definitely be a really great NBA player, but with a draft that's a little on the weaker side and someone with that talent, man, it's tough to pass on that. I mean, I kind of like Killian Hayes. I kind of like LaMelo. I also know they're committed to D'Angelo Russell, or at least they appear to be. So I think they probably do go with Anthony Edwards, which worries me a little for him. I think he could use a lot of development in a lot of different ways, which we could talk about. And I don't know if they're the location that'll help him do that, but I'm kind of thinking that's where they should, and they're probably going to go.
All right, what do you think his role is as an NBA player?
Well, when he first gets there, I think he's just going to kind of be an energy, athletic wing. You know, he's going to be cutting to the basket, getting out in transition. He could stand to improve a lot of his defensive consistency and discipline, but I think NBA coaching should do that. And if they can do that, I think on day one he can become a really good defensive wing, maybe off the bench. Get you points, like I said, energy ways, off cuts and transition, maybe off some rebounds. And as he develops, if he can develop his jump shot, which has shown flashes, he's pretty good from deep, which bodes well in the NBA as the line gets farther. He can become a really, really good scorer. And I think he can become a really good wing scorer who's a great defender. And so if he hits that ceiling, I think he can be an all-star caliber two guard.
So when you say great defender, are you basing it off of his tools or from what you've seen?
His tools. I mean, what we've seen flashes, right? But there's a lot of lack of discipline. And I do think a lot of it is going to be helped by NBA coaching. But that's kind of why I worry about him going to Minnesota, right? Like if this were San Antonio or someone who I'd really trust to just give to them and just say, go ahead, take him, develop him. It might be a little different, but I don't know if they'll turn him into a great defender. Because right now, you're right, he's not. But he has the tools. So it's really a matter of what he does with those tools. We'll see. But he has the athleticism, the size, the intensity, and the ability to be a great defender, I believe, one day.
All right, as far as player comparisons, what is your name three guys that you think that he could compare to? Give me like your best case scenario, maybe most realistic scenario, and then ceiling scenario.
All right. Well, I think he can be a Zach LaVine if he, at like worst case scenario, maybe not quite as good as Zach LaVine, but worst case scenario, he can be an incredibly athletic wing scorer. And if he develops a little more from there, I think I see a little bit of Jaylen Brown in him. Now that's a lot of development, but the kid has a lot of potential. So I could see a Jaylen Brown scenario for him, but it's tough because he just has a long way to go. I know people have said they see a little D Wade in him, and those comparisons sound crazy, and especially for someone who's so raw. But I think there is a best case scenario where he becomes a superstar wing player, like maybe not a D Wade potentially, but maybe more like a Jaylen Brown, but like a Zach LaVine, a really athletic scorer who's just around in the league because he just has that ability. I think at worst case scenario, he can be that.
Right. Okay. All right. So now number 2, you have LaMelo Ball. And now when you have him at number 2, you're saying that you think that he would be the best fit for the Warriors?
Well, no, I don't know if he'd be necessarily the best fit for the Warriors. I also kind of am wondering what the Warriors are going to do or what they're looking for. I don't really know if the Warriors are looking to add a piece that can be a long-term piece, or if they're looking to trade the pick, or if they're looking for someone who maybe isn't the greatest long-term piece but can help them now. But I think just as in terms of who the second best guy potential-wise is, LaMelo, he's unbelievable. I mean, his vision, his passing, it's crazy. And there's a lot that he doesn't do well, and that's tough to be picking someone high and when you're worried about their defense and you're maybe worried about their shooting. But someone with that court vision, that passing ability, that ability to lead an offense, run out in transition, he also just has a feel for the game. It's tough to pass on him if he's there at number 2, man. He's got a lot that you love when you watch him play.
Well, if you've been following, I'm not as high on the
Are you not?
LaMelo LaMelo train as everybody else. No,
It's
not at all.
tough. There's a lot to not like too right now. That's the thing.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, I base it off of if I didn't know anything about him and I didn't have the whole, social media influence, all the, like the ESPNs and the other sites. I mean, he's box office, so
Yeah.
anything that he does is going to be it's I mean, you're going to see more of it just because, I get it. That's the business. Um, I think the Ringer, maybe a week or two ago, I felt like had the most fair breakdown of him. I mean, they broke down all the things that he does well and just, all the pressure that he's been under since he's been in the spotlight since he was so young. But they also broke down how he was the worst defender in Australia.
Yeah.
And just broke down his weaknesses. While, yeah, I mean, I don't have anything against him. I'm just not as high on him as others because I feel like he has a long way to go on the defensive end of the floor as far as effort. I don't think the shot is there yet, which it can be. I mean, he's so young. He's 19, maybe 18 years old. So that doesn't necessarily concern me right away. But the biggest concern for me is having to play in structure for the first time and playing in a system that is not designed for him to. I mean, it may be designed. I did have some questions about Trae Young. I was like, is he going to go to a team that's going to allow him to not really play defense and shoot a bunch of shots and just have total freedom of the offense? And he did, and he found a good fit in Atlanta. And he was an all-star in year 2, and so it worked out for him. But I am curious to see if LaMelo ends up in that type of a situation, because let's say he does go number 2 to Golden State, that's not going to be the case.
Yeah.
And I think he may struggle a little bit in that situation because it's such a win now situation for Golden State. So I don't think that would be a good fit for him short term. And like short term, if you're a player or an agent or whatever, I don't know if you really care about wins and losses. You're just trying to establish yourself as an NBA player and get yourself in position to get the big contract on your second deal. So I don't know if Golden State would be a good fit for him. On one hand, it could be because you'll learn how to play the right way and you'll have to earn your minutes and you'll be held accountable. So I think in that aspect, it would be good for him for his long-term growth. But I think short-term for his buzz and his market, it would be better for him to go to like a bad team and put up numbers and stat. I don't know. It's just so many different factors. But I've said it time and time again. I think Killian is a better player to me because I think that eventually, short term, he'll be a better shooter, and I think he's a better defender. He's not as big, not as flashy of a passer, but he's a really good playmaker and passer. And I just felt like even though Killian's team wasn't the best either, I felt like he played against a little bit more competition and more meaningful games in Germany and in the Euro Cup last year than LaMelo played in the NBL, which is not really. I mean, I don't think it's a real good league. I had a chance to go out there and watch. I don't think like domestically it's a good league. And so if you're the worst defender in the not strong league, that leads me to be concerned, especially his lack of defense is just pure effort. Like he has the tools, he has the length to be a multi-positional defender. And you can say the same thing about Anthony Edwards also. But like I've said, one thing you can't teach what Melo has is size, confidence, and I mean just the creativity. Like some of those passes he throws are ridiculous. And this man, like he's super talented. But like I said, my concerns are how is he going to fare if he doesn't have a system that is totally set up for him. So I felt like in Australia, it helped his stock tremendously because he wasn't on anybody's draft boards like this at this time last year. But also, I feel if he would have shot underhand scoop shots or just shot from half court like he did at Chino Hills, they weren't going to bench him or take him out the game because he was selling tickets. So that's my big concern about him. But I went on a tangent there. So, all right, now here are your comparisons. Actually, you know what? Name your comparisons.
All right. The first I have, I put down Lonzo Ball. I think he can. Now he's not the defender Lonzo is. I don't know if he has the effort to be the rebounder that Lonzo is, but I think he can be like a Lonzo type player in this league. I think he can just be a distributing guard who gets minutes and maybe starts eventually just because of that. Now, I wrote a tall Ricky Rubio because just when Ricky Rubio came to the league, some of his passes he has great vision. He's a great passer, obviously. They were just so flashy. And he kind of reminds me of that. Now, obviously, like taller because Ricky's not very tall. Ricky's not built like that. But, I mean, Ricky had that flashy passing ability that just, like, stood out. And then and this is extreme, I put Luka Doncic. That's
so disrespectful.
Listen, this is ceiling, man. This is if all of a sudden he shocks us, but he has that ability where he has that vision, right? And that's what makes Luka really special. And Luka's working on developing his efficiency from range, but he has that ability to make step back moves and to do things from the perimeter to get himself space, to get shots that are pretty incredible. And I see a little bit of that in LaMelo. Again, I don't know that he'll ever become that good. I don't even know that he'll become that good a shooter, which isn't saying a ton. It's not like Luka's a great knockdown three-point shooter yet. But if LaMelo can put it all together, I think he has that vision and that passing ability and just the feel for the game, man. Luka has that feel for the game that is just you can't teach. And I think LaMelo has that. Now, he doesn't have – the energy, the effort, the leadership, all that Luka has, and he doesn't right now have the shooting quite yet. But I just think he has in his skill set, in his body somewhere, he has that ability. I think that could be like his ceiling. Maybe Luka light, I'll say. How's that?
That's tough. So, all right. So when you have him number 2, and 2 of his comparisons are Lonzo Ball and Ricky Rubio, are those franchise guys?
No.
See, and that's why
we're hoping he hits more of a ceiling, right? That's kind of the issue with this draft, especially.
That's a huge gap between Luka and Lonzo and Rubio.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I think there is a lot in LaMelo that could go from either like close to a bust or a superstar. That's the thing. I think there is a big gap in range of ability and what he could become. I think it wouldn't shock me if he's just a guy who gets some minutes in the league and he's just around, or if you tell me he's an all-star in 4 years. Neither would shock me. That's the thing. He's kind of one of those. But in this draft, there's the guys who are 3, 4, and 5 that I have. I might even like them a little more and think they could be better. But, with the first and second pick, especially in the draft, you might think is weak. Or are you shooting for the guy you think has the higher ceiling and you think you can hit on as an all-star, or are you going for the guy you think maybe he won't be a great player, maybe he won't be an all-star every year, but he'll be good? It's tough. It's kind of what I think. LaMelo might not be as good as Okoro or Hayes or a lot of other guys, Haliburton maybe, but I also think that he could be better than all of them. So it's tough,
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that I'm not a GM and I have to make a choice, because I mentioned in a previous podcast I talked to a someone that's related to, or in the inner circle with a lottery pick, that has talked to some teams, and they were saying that there are some teams that are just like, we hope he's not on the board when we draft, because we don't want to be in position to draft him if we don't like him like that. And the downfall of it. All right, so let's go to number 3 on your board. This is somewhat of a shocker.
I got Okoro. I'm really high in Okoro. Now, I go back and forth because I like Okoro and Vassell. I also love Hayes, and it's fluid. I could change it still. I could go back and forth. Right now, though, I think Okoro is an unbelievable defender. I think his defense translates at the next level. I think he's the kind of guy who he'll pick up he'll pick up a point guard, and then in switches off the pick and roll, whatever it is, he can pick up a big in limited minutes or in limited segments. I think he is so intense. I always think about guys like a Jimmy Butler, who you may not have seen him becoming a superstar coming out of the league, but it's hard to see that intensity and that desire that really took him to the next level. I think Okoro kind of has that. So I have him so high because I think at worst he can be an excellent perimeter defender and just overall defender in the league. And the offense, that has a long way to go. But it kind of goes back to what I said about you're trying to hit a home run when you're picking high. I think if you can develop his offense, if he can develop somewhat of a consistent jump shot, if he can become maybe a transition guy with all that athleticism and speed, I think he can be a really excellent player. It's mostly, right now, his defense. I love his defense, and I think that's just going to carry him for a while as he adds everything else. Like Jimmy Butler for a while was a defensive guy, and I kind of added everything along the way. And here he is now, and he's just kind of a two-way superstar. I think Okoro, it could be that track where it takes a few years of adding to his offensive game, but I think that perimeter defense and just overall defense will help carry him for a few years as he tries to do that.
Yeah. Do you feel like Lugens Dort helped Okoro a little bit in the playoffs?
Probably. It's just that you saw the value of a guy who we can just toss you on who we need to toss you on to shut them down, and then stand on the perimeter and just do your best to knock down open threes, because we're going to need you to, because they're going to leave you open. And I think I think next season as a rookie, that could be exactly Okoro's role. Maybe not in the playoffs trying to shut down James Harden, but, a guy who is just, look, you're a really good defender and you're going to guard the other team's best offensive guy, so we can give our best offensive guy, some rest, and we just need you to hit open threes when they're there. And if he can do that well, then I think he can add everything else as it goes. But definitely, you saw the value of that guy in that series in these playoffs.
Yep. So your comparisons, I know you mentioned Jimmy Butler, but who are your comparisons?
So I think Andre Roberson is the kind of guy he can be right away. Like, he can be just, a really good – Andre Roberson, a really good perimeter defender, great perimeter defender. Can't really shoot, isn't a huge plus offensively, but the defense kind of carries him out there. I think he can be that pretty fast. Lou Dort, another one. Just guard the best guy and just hit open threes if you can. But if he can add to his game, I think he has a little bit of Jaylen Brown in him. I know I said that about Edwards. I think they're kind of similar players in a way. But I see a little Jalen and I see a little Jimmy Butler. Just it would take a lot, and that's high. That's when I say low, like floor and ceiling. That's real high ceiling. But he has that defensive ability and intensity that you can't teach. That you either have it when you get in the league, like Marcus Smart had it, or you don't. And he has it. And I think there's so few of those guys at that level. And maybe I'm wrong and he won't be that good a defender. But at the level of defense I think he can give you, I think it's worth just grabbing him when you can at 3 or 4.
So you're saying if you're Charlotte, that would be your choice there?
If I'm Charlotte, it's between him, Vassell, and Hayes for me. And I mean, that's just because I keep going back and forth between the 3. But I'm still leaning towards Okoro. Because I think in 3 or 4 years, whatever these guys become, I at least know he'll be in the league, a guy who can start for you because of his perimeter defense. And he's a good kid. You know, he's a smart kid. He's a good head in his shoulders. I think he'll add a lot to his offensive game just from working hard. Hopefully he gets good coaching. Don't know if that's in Charlotte. We'll see. But, you know, I think he has a lot of defense already. I think sometimes that can carry you for a little while.
See, that's why I like Okoro too. I'm wondering though, in today's NBA, can you survive as a wing that provides zero offense? I'm not saying that that's the case with him,
Right.
but you know, in years past, you could hide a poor offensive player. You could hide a Andre Roberson. He could play major minutes on a team contending for a championship.
Tony
You could
Allen.
have a Tony Allen on your team, but in today's NBA, where spacing and offense is so valued, I think no matter how great of a defender you are, if you're not at least average on offense, you end up killing like your spacing. And I mean, just look at the series with Houston and the Lakers. The way they defended Westbrook made life hard for everybody else. Like Houston couldn't even get corner threes off because they stayed connected to the shooters, and they had AD guarding Russ, and he was basically just guarding an area, and it just killed their their offense. And so I wonder, it's kind of weird, like it goes two ways in a sense. Like if you have a really bad defender, then teams in the playoffs are gonna hunt him down and make him pay. But then if you have a guy that doesn't bring any offense, it's gonna like kill this. It's just gonna kill all spacing. I remember trying to think of another example. I mean, even like New Orleans in the bubble, teams weren't guarding Lonzo Ball when they were trying to make their playoff run. And Lonzo, he shot like 38, high 37% from 3 this year, but they were mostly uncontested threes. And then, but teams just weren't guarding him. He made life tougher for everyone else because, you know, your driving lanes, you had a man sitting there waiting on you. So I said all that to say this. I think that Okoro, I like him. I am going to buy into his potential as being able to be somewhat respectable from 3. But the problem is, like, I don't know if Andre Roberson would have like a 10-year career if it started like today, because the game is just, it's just so different. I mean, yeah, I mean, like you need to have some type of offense if you're a wing. But I think one thing that helps Okoro in a sense is that if he can just become average at 3, it opens up so much of his game because he can put the ball on the floor. I think he's a pretty decent playmaker. And yeah, I mean, if he becomes a good piece. But one of the other things that makes me wonder in this draft is that in the lottery, you would think teams are looking for like a home run.
Right.
The guy, and I mean, if his best case is like a Jimmy Butler, that's awesome. But he still seems more so of a specialist, a defensive specialist. And in most years, you're not looking for a wing three or defensive specialist as a top 5 or 6 pick.
Right.
I mean, Marcus Smart is an exception. And, he was one thing about Marcus Smart, the difference between Marcus Smart and Okoro for me is Marcus Smart never, ever lacked confidence in his shot, even when he was shooting.
Should have. I'm a Celtics fan, so I know.
Yeah, even when he was shooting 29% in the low 20s or mid 20s early in his career, he never lacked confidence.
Nope.
And even though you can say he was a detriment in a sense, he was still a threat out there.
Yeah.
Because he was gonna pull it. I mean, there were times I'm like, dude, why are you shooting transition threes and But Okoro is different in that he passes up threes.
Absolutely.
And so to me, that's the biggest difference between them.
His confidence should improve.
Yeah. And I mean, like, you can say Marcus Smart is an irrational confidence guy, but
he's one of them.
He's now become a good shooter.
Yeah, no, in these playoffs, it's crazy.
Yeah, he had a game where he made 5 threes. And so back in the day, like earlier in his career, if you took his defense away, he wasn't an NBA player.
No, absolutely not.
But his confidence has never wavered, and now you can't leave him open.
No, you can't. He's good enough now. He stretches the floor. Okoro's got to get to like at least a Marcus Smart level shooting threes if he wants to be a really good player.
Yep. All right, so moving on to number 4, Killian Hayes. So what do you like about Killian?
And I really love Killian. He makes it really tough for me to not move him up on my board, which he might eventually. He fits really well in today's game with the pick and roll. I think he can run an offense, I don't know, day one, but pretty fast. The kid has a great feel for the game. He's an excellent passer. I know some people worry about he's kind of one-dimensional going left. I'm not as worried about that. I feel like people say that a lot, but when it's a lefty, I don't think people worry about righties, whether or not they're going left. I don't know. I'm not too worried about it. I think he could stand to benefit from being a little more versatile there. But other than that, I think he'll be great in transition, the pick and roll. He can get his own shot, and he can make threes. I think in the NBA, I think he'll be someone who can be a knockdown 3-point shooter. The only thing I worry about is his ceiling. I don't know that he'll ever be really a great defender. He could be. And I don't know that he has great athleticism. So I wonder how good can he be? Like, I wonder if like a Mike Conley, I have that as one of his comps for like his ceiling, if that's like the best he possibly can be. But Mike Conley is be a really good pick. So he can move up for me, but I think he fits in really well. I don't think there's a lot of downside. The only downside is that he may have a lower ceiling as far as becoming a true superstar, but he has some ability. He can get his own shot. I love his little step back he does. I like him a lot, man.
Do you feel like athleticism is becoming overrated?
It might be, and that is kind of contributing to why I feel like I made to move him up. I mean, listen, Steph Curry dominated the league for a few years, and that guy, no one's going to mistake him for being an athletic freak.
But he does have this one-of-one skill set that can over. But I mean, I think about D'Angelo Russell. Yeah, he was an all-star. He was in the East, and he may not be an all-star in the West, but he's been like a 20-something point per game scorer, and he's not a great athlete by any means. I don't even think he can get by anybody off the dribble.
No, I mean, and D'Angelo, he reminds me a lot of D'Angelo too in a way. Except I do think Killian, he can beat guys off the dribble a little bit. I mean, it's gonna take a little time for him to develop his game and everything, but he's kind of, I don't know, man. Yeah, other than the athleticism, like I said, he's kind of the full package. Like he can kind of do it all. There's not much you look at. You say, "Oh, I wish he could do this." You know what I mean? He kind of like checks all the boxes in a way.
Go right.
Well, yeah,
But
that
yeah, I think that um, I think that he'll develop into a good shooter. As far as the athleticism aspect of it goes, I think because he plays at such a smooth pace that it gets over. Well, a lot of people don't think he's athletic because it's not like breakneck speed, or a lot of times when you think of athleticism, you just think of lightning quick first step, vertical pop. And
that's
I
true.
remember like with Luka, that was a big question. Is he athletic? Can he do this, or can he score against athletic defenders? He makes up for with a high IQ. Not saying Killian is on the same level as Luka as far as like IQ and all that, but Luka has a different type of athleticism that we're not used to. It's his ability to accelerate, decelerate, create space,
Change of speed.
and his footwork, his long strides and Euro steps. And he makes up for not being this great, freak athlete. But I've seen like some of the best athletic defenders in the NBA not be able to stop him from getting to his spots. And
Yeah.
so I think with Killian, he may not be able to blow by guys straight up off the dribble, but you give him a screen, I think he has enough to be able to, make you pay for switching. And then I think because he is a threat to score, it opens up his passing. And especially if he's going left, he can whip those left hand passes all across the floor. So yeah, I think to me, I see a little bit of D'Angelo Russell in a sense. I think he's a better finisher. And believe it or not, out of all the guards that were at least projected in the lottery, he was the best finisher as far as percentage wise, finishing at the rim. Only one that was higher was Tyrese Haliburton, but that's because all his finishes at the rim came in like transition
Yeah.
or,
Yeah.
he cut and nobody was there. He's not like
Guarding. Yeah.
putting the ball on the floor. And so, yeah, I think that despite the fact that he only went right, I'm sorry, he only went left, and he's not known to have like this great athleticism. He was the best finisher at the rim, and he did attack the rim at a pretty fair amount. So I like Hayes. So what are your comparisons for him?
Man, I think you're pretty much kind of talking me into him moving up. But yeah, I put down a taller Isaiah Thomas. That's like I almost feel like that's disrespectful. I mean, he's not going to be a sieve on defense. He'll play some D. He reminds me of Isaiah in the sense that I like his little, first of all, his step back kind of reminds me of Isaiah, his little step back. I like his
Mm-hmm.
pick and roll game. I think he can just be a good scorer who can distribute. But I think a better one is a D'Lo. I think D'Angelo Russell and Mike Conley, because I think he has that passing ability that's just unbelievable. I mean, I think it's right there with LaMelo. Um, yeah, I mean, Killian's just he has it all. I could see him being a D'Angelo Russell, someone who's like a borderline all-star. Maybe makes it 1 year, but it's just so reliable. Like he'll get you 20 points, he'll get you 10 assists, he'll run the pick and roll offense. He's just going to be a plus. I mean, yeah, I could see him being like a borderline all-star, maybe all-star. And what you said about athleticism is interesting. I mean, he has good change of speed, he has good change of direction. He does kind of have some of that smooth athleticism that doesn't maybe pop off the screen, but matters a lot. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean, totally different positions, but look how Jokic has
yeah,
dominated with.
I
I
can
mean,
barely dunk.
yeah, he doesn't. He's not beating you off the dribble. He's not like touching the square on rebounds. He has just. I mean, I wonder, has he changed the way we value athleticism, especially if
Yeah,
a guy has a really really high IQ and can pass the ball, make plays for others. I just think in some cases you can offset athleticism with high IQ and decision making. And Jokic is a legit superstar. Like a lot of people saw him as an all-star or he's good, but now that the lights are on him in the playoffs and all that, he is a legit superstar,
That
and he
kid's a
will be
dog.
for years to come.
He's crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, I know he was like I want to say like early 40s or pick, but
Yeah,
think about
something.
all the guys that were drafted ahead of him because they were more athletic or had more upside. We always tend to, like, I don't know, just these freak athletes, and you think, well, we can mold them into this. And in some cases, it is true, but I know a lot of teams are kicking themselves for passing on Jokic or the fact that they didn't know about him.
That's a good point.
All right, let's move on down to number 5, Devin Vassell. What what do you think is his potential? So I think that he has one of the higher ceilings in the draft
Absolutely.
if he can just work on his ball handling, his offensive creativity, and going to the rack. I think if he can add that to his game and be a threat to really like put the ball on the floor and attack closeouts, he becomes a 3-level scorer in the NBA.
Right.
And it is very hard to find a guy that can defend multiple positions, knock down open shots, hit the pull up, and get to the basket. I think he has the defense down. He has the 3-point shooting down. And if he never develops like I want him to, I still think he's Trevor Ariza at the minimum.
Right. Right.
But if he can develop and become a little bit more aggressive and assertive and add some attack the basket to his game, I think he could be like a Paul George. I mean, of course, people are low on Paul George right now, but
Yep.
He could be Paul George. But he just doesn't get to the free throw line. 1.5 free throw attempts per game in his 2-year career. So, what do you like about his game, and what do you think his ceiling is?
Yeah, kind of a lot of the things that you like. I like his shooting a lot. Obviously, his defense is really good. I think a lot of the problems we're talking about, like getting to the rack, getting to the free throw line, I think it should help if he bulks up, which I mean usually happens as kids age and grow, and they get NBA training. That'll help him a lot because he's still kind of. I mean, he's long, he's tall, he's got the butt, but he could bulk up a little bit. I think that would help his defense a little more. I mean, he's already a really good defender, but I mean, when he gets to the NBA, if he can bulk up and become really switchable on the bigs and other wings and guards and everything, I think he can be just such a good defender. And he already had, like you said, he has the shooting down. Yeah, if he can work on the ball handling, becoming maybe a playmaker. If he becomes a really good scorer, they're going to start to defend him different. He's going to have to learn how to make plays off that. I'm watching Jason Tatum do it for my Celtics, and he's starting to learn how to. They're going to trap me all the time now. I got to make plays. I got to handle the ball well. So he's got to add that. Get to the rim, get to the free throw line. But if he can develop into that, I see a little Chris Middleton in him. But like you said, even if he doesn't develop, you see him as like a Trevor Ariza. Like similarly, I have him as not a Buddy Hield, as a Kelly Oubre, pretty fast. Just because I think he can go out there and he can score, he can hit threes, and then he'll just defend. It's a matter of what he can add. Can he get to the free throw line when maybe a shot's not going in? Can he play make when they're trapping him, when they're not going to let him score? That's going to determine if he can take it to the next level. But yeah, like a Chris Middleton or something, I kind of see that. But yeah, Paul George is a good one too. He kind of has all the things that you need. He just kind of has to add the things that really make you great now.
Yep. So, do you have concerns about his frame?
To a point, I don't know if I'm concerned about it, making him not a valuable player in the league. But if he's a good defender, And I think right now he's best covering wings, longer, smaller fours, 3-4 hybrids. But if he can get bigger, he can guard like serious fours. He can honestly switch on to fives eventually, and it won't be a disaster for a play. I think I'm not concerned about his frame, but I think that will help him take it to the next level. Same with getting to the free throw line. I think if he can, it'll also takes confidence and ability, but if he can get bigger, he can start, drawing fouls, maybe having more confidence to make contact. I think the frame is what it concerns me, that his frame won't allow him to become great, but I don't think it's a problem. But I think that's kind of a lot of what is going to determine his ceiling.
Which is a perfect transition to the next prospect, which is Tyrese Haliburton. I think they have similarities as far as their frame and some concerns for me, not major concerns, but the fact that they're 2 years in college. They've been around the college weight program for a couple of years. And of course, they're still young. They're still like not fully developed. But how much weight and how much strength have they added under 2 years with a pretty good situation as far as like weights.
Right.
But like I said, it's not too much of a major concern. Halliburton is a guy who on my list, I think he's sliding a little bit because I'd have to think like, all right, if he's matched, if I have him work out with Cole Anthony, who is going to dominate that workout? I think Cole would kick his butt.
Cole Anthony, yeah.
Same thing with Kyrie Lewis. Same thing with RJ Hampton. And I know like workouts aren't everything in a sense, but I think like if you put them heads up in a workout, I think that he would struggle against those guys. And then if I'm his agent, I am not allowing him to work out with any of those guys. Matter of fact, if I'm Halliburton's agent, he's not working out with anybody. We're just going to shoot threes and do a film study. I'm going to sell you on his IQ and him as a person, but I'm not allowing him in any head-to-head workouts because he doesn't have the one-on-one game. He doesn't have, at least he hasn't shown that he has that in him. And so I think that he may be a safer pick than maybe a Cole Anthony or some other guys. But I don't think he provides the real upside that those guys do, because in my opinion, it's tough to have a point guard that can't get in the lane, that doesn't break the defense down. Right. So I'm going to drop him a little bit, but he does have what I like. I think that he is going to knock down open shots. He gives you a big wing playmaker, a good passer, and I think that he's going to play a role. And so I just think that he is what you consider safe.
Right. That makes sense.
And so what do you think his ceiling is, or his comparisons?
I think his ceiling, and this will obviously adding to his frame, because I think he's a really good defender, but he's got to get bigger, man. But if he can do that, I think he's similar to a Drew Holiday type. If he can hit his ceiling, a guy who can run a pick and roll, who's going to defend your best guard. He can even switch a little bit onto some threes. And I think he has really good vision, and he's a really good playmaker. So I can see him becoming, a one guard, a two guard, combo guard maybe, but who can run the pick and roll. It does concern me a little. His one-on-one offense isn't great. So I think I see a little bit of Lonzo in him at his floor. Like right away, he can be like a Lonzo type. But yeah, he's kind of a guy who I've gone back and forth on. A lot of people really like his shooting, and his shooting numbers are good. I also look at his form, and I never know how much to place on the form, but I think it matters how a guy's footwork is, how his upper body is, and I just think his release is so weird. I've heard him in interviews say it's about strength, and as he gets stronger, more comfortable with the shot. But I don't know, should that concern me? that he's not strong enough to get up a comfortable look? Or are you going to have to change your shot so much that it's no longer natural? I don't know. I worry about that.
I don't think he needs to change his shot, to be honest. I mean, as long as it goes in.
Oh yeah, it's just.
But as
But
far as, I guess, shooting off the dribble and pull-ups, and yeah, now that's a concern. But
it's like a set shot. I don't know.
it's like a push set shot that you would see a 12-year-old shoot when they don't have the strength to shoot with range. Yep.
But listen, if it works, it works. So I don't know. And what you said about workouts is interesting too, because absolutely, he's a guy who he's going to get drafted based on what you see in a game, his vision, his basketball intelligence, all of that. And I always wonder, like, how much should you value workouts? And I don't know, because I remember hearing about Darko Milicic when the Detroit got their hands on him for a workout. That was it. Like, he just impressed them, and they made their pick. And
but he didn't work out against anybody. But even with Darko, and I remember I had this conversation with an NBA general manager years ago. I just happened to, run into him and had the opportunity to talk with him. And I said, and this was probably maybe even 3 years into his career. And I said, yeah, I can't believe they passed up Melo. And he was like, talent is not Darko's issue. He said that he would have made that same choice if he were in charge. And he was thankful that he wasn't.
Right.
He was saying how the guy was 7 foot. He could shoot threes at the time. He could defend. He could block shots. He could move. But the one thing you can't predict is how people react to adversity and so on. And I think it's tough. Like, workouts are somewhat important, especially this year. Teams aren't going to get a chance to really watch guys work out. And then there are some guys that are better suited for workouts than actual games, because I think Haliburton is more so of a gamer than a workout guy. But that's why I said if I were his agent, I would not put him in a workout. Because I don't think that's a situation where he'll look good at all. But that's why this is so unpredictable.
It's hard.
And then now agents are hiding their players in workouts, which, I just kind of admitted that that's what I would do if I were Haliburton's agent, because the story that I heard that made it make sense was Nate Robinson was beating everybody one-on-one in workouts. And
doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, like, who can guard 5'9" energy guy like that in space where there's no help defense? It's just one-on-one. You can't really try to post him up because he's so strong, lower center of gravity.
Yeah.
And they say he was just dominating people. And then I think they say Tyreke Evans was the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, you couldn't check him one-on-one in workouts. But yeah, I think I don't know, like with Haliburton, I was higher on him before, and I could be overanalyzing because we've had so much time.
Right, that's true.
And this class is going to be so overanalyzed because, I mean, they've had like double the off season in a sense, and you can watch your guys film 9-10 times now and keep changing your mind. But he's someone that, for whatever reasons, as time goes on, his value is dropping a little bit to me, while other guys I'm watching their film and it's going up.
I think he's similar to Hayes enough where if you're picking between one or the other, you want like a point guard who can run your offense, whatever. I think you're taking Hayes. I think that kind of hurts him a little bit.
Hayes, I mean, even now, I may take Cole Anthony ahead of him.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, I figure that Cole can be an engine.
Right.
And I don't know if Haliburton can be the engine for my team. And then one of the things I like about Cole now, I was really low on him during the season. Okay. But as I watched his film a little bit, I realized like he didn't have a good situation at Carolina as far as his team. The reason why he struggled at the rim was because he had no floor spacing. But what I like is he's a dog. Like, he's
Yeah.
confident. He's never going to back down. And the biggest thing for me that did it for him was when he was injured. I think he tore his meniscus, and Carolina was bad. They weren't going anywhere. Their season was pretty much done, and he came back and he played. But not only did he play, he didn't play like he's protecting his draft stock or whatever. He came out and played hard. Like, I want to say he had 30 something free throw attempts in his first 2 games coming back. And that's like one of the intangibles and toughness that I like.
It matters.
Yeah, because a lot of guys shut it down. Like,
Yeah.
one of my knocks on Melo is once his stock was high and his team was losing, he shut it down. He played 14 games. He's going to go a full calendar year before playing the game.
Yeah, that's tough. It makes it tough to evaluate too,
Yeah. And so, I think like there's some teams that look at that, they hold that type of mentality on a higher level than others. And so I think, like, if I had to choose between who would be a Miami Heat guy to fit into that system, I think Cole would fit their mold.
100%.
So it's little things like that.
Right.
Here's a shocker. This is the biggest shocker I've seen as far as range. Jalen Smith at number 7.
Now, I really love Jalen Smith. I've said it before. I could be crazy because I also like Okongwu a lot, and I don't dislike James Wiseman, but I see Jalen Smith as someone who can develop into a stretchy big. I think he's definitively a 5. He reminds me of a Miles Turner a little bit. I mean, I don't know if he has the bulk or the length necessarily. I'm not sure, but he reminds me of a stretchy 5 who can defend a little bit, get you boards, and stretch the floor. And I think that matters a lot today. I think it can get overstated, having a 5 who can shoot. But I think that matters still. And I just think he has the ability. I think he might not develop into that. It might end up making me look really stupid eventually. But I just see in him something that I don't see in an Okongwu or another big. And like if I'm the Celtics and I'm looking for a big, I just wonder, like, do I want someone like Okongwu or do I want someone like Jalen Smith who I can think can step out and stretch the floor for me and be a plus offensively? I think that matters a lot what they can do. I think if you can't, like you said, being a two-way guy matters, and if you can't stay in the game defensively, you can't stay in, and if you can't stay in the game offensively, and I think that his ability to score and shoot, I think that is important to have a 5 who you can keep on the floor who can do that for you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where it comes from me. But I also recognize that he can make me look real bad if, he gets in the league and he's not a really good defender, if he isn't really that good a shooter and doesn't stretch the floor like I'm hoping. So, but I like his shot a lot. And I think that's a lot of the reason I've had him higher than most people do.
You know where I think would be the perfect fit for him?
Where?
New Orleans.
Okay.
I think I don't have him that high, but he is someone that I think is going to move up when I do my next board. But I think with New Orleans, fit is everything, because I feel like with Jackson Hayes, can you play him and Zion together? I don't think there's going to be any floor spacing. I think Zion needs to be, if he's going to be a 4, then you need to pair him with a 5 that can rebound, block shots, and space the floor, and then give Zion room to operate in the paint. And to me, Jalen Smith is the perfect player in this draft that can do a little bit of both. Finding a big that can, knock down open shots, run the floor, defend, rebound. That's going to be hard to find all of those different skill sets in one player. And that's why I think he would be perfect for the Pelicans, because either you have to move Zion to the 5 and then pair him with the 4-man that is a stretch shooter, but then I think defensively you may have some issues, and then you don't have any rebounding.
Right.
And so I think Jalen Smith would be ideal there. And I mean, if I'm Pelicans, that's who I look at in a sense, just for the fit. He may not be the best player, in my opinion, on the board at 13, but I think he's the best fit because they already have their cornerstones. They already got their two guys in Ingram and Zion, and at least for the long term. So now it's just a matter of just putting the complementary pieces around them.
Right. Yeah,
But
he
based
checks.
off your list, he won't be available.
Well, no, he won't be. I mean, yeah, he checks a lot of boxes. It's kind of like what you value. But if you value a 5 who can stay on the floor because he can do all those things, that can be a big thing to have.
Yep.
So we'll see.
Yeah, I think for him the issue is getting stronger.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
And he's another guy that's 2 years and he's still really skinny.
Yeah.
And then I think what may turn scouts off about him is, does his frame look like it can add much weight to it? Because, narrow hips, skinny legs. And so, yeah, I mean, how much weight, how much strength can he add? That'll probably be the biggest question going forward about him.
Right.
All right. Number 8. So number 8 on your list is Paul Reed, another. I like the fact that your list is totally different than anyone I've seen. Like, Paul Reed is on a lot of draft boards. Is a second round pick. I think that anyway, in this draft, I feel like 15 through 35 is so interchangeable.
Yeah. Right.
A guy could go anywhere. So what's that?
I've seen him high, and I've seen him up in like the 15, 16, 17, and you're right, like then in the second. So he's that range is big for him.
But Paul Reed over Okongwu, I got to hear this.
I love Paul Reed, man. Well, the first thing is I think he's an incredible defender. I mean, there's a lot of guys I say I think they're a good defender. I think they're a good defender. I think he is an incredible defender. I think Okongwu I like a lot. Like, none of these taking other guys who are bigs ahead of him. It's not really anything against him. But I think Paul Reed can be a guy who can be a 5, but he can also play the 4. I think he can guard everybody. I think he plays with so much energy. I mean, if you watch him, he's just like up and down the floor, moving, like going for boards. Like, he defends. If he gets out of position because he has to help out or trap, he gets back fast. He closes out fast. I just think he can be a defensive monster in the league. And that's why I've seen a lot of, because he has a lot to develop on offense. He has kind of a weird jump shot. I don't think it's so bad that it can't improve and become serviceable, but he doesn't bring you a lot on offense right now. So that's why I've seen him in the second round. And then I've seen people who have had him really high too, because of that defense, that rebounding, that energy. I think he can be a guy that can just be like a dominant defensive guy who he'll have to add to his offensive game. I mean, this is absolutely a pick based on ceiling. And you're not picking him and thinking like by next season or in 2 seasons we'll have the full. No, you're hoping to develop him a little bit, and he's not that young, so that's a little bit of a concern with developing him. But just that defense, that rebounding, that seems special to me, man. I mean, I haven't seen anyone else who I think defends that well or with that motor in this draft, and that's something you can't replace. And I think if you can just make him a solid 3-point shooter, he can just be like a dominant defender who's a solid plus on offense, and that can be just incredibly valuable to have. Someone who can be an excellent defender on almost any position, who also brings you something on offense. So if he can develop that shot, man, I see him being a really good starter for a really long time. But he has to develop that shot in that offensive game for sure.
All right, so who do you compare him to?
So when I first saw him, it was interesting because I didn't even really know what's his position at the next level, right? But I've kind of concluded he's a 5. I think he's a 5. He kind of reminds me a little bit of like a Maxi Kleba. He reminds me a little bit of a Bam. Uh, I think Bam is a good one. I think Bam is like what he would become if he kind of hits all the benchmarks that I think he will. I also put down, I don't think he'll become this good, but as far as type of player, I put down Amari Stoudemire because I think offensively, if he becomes, he'll have to develop his shot. But another thing he can add, I think if he can become good in the pick and roll, he can be a guy who's just a great finisher at the rim because he's strong. He's pretty athletic.
Athleticism.
So, yeah, I see offensively being like a pick and roll guy, and potentially if he really hits a ceiling, that it's just like a dominant rim runner. And then on defense, just like I said, a great player. So I think Bam is a really good comp for him. And like a Maxi Kleba is kind of like a floor. I think regardless, he'll have a spot, maybe not in huge minutes, but like he can go out there and defend almost anyone. I think pretty fast in the league. So we'll see how fast he can develop the offensive game. But yeah, that's what I see from him right now.
All right, moving on to numero 9. This guy I have higher on my board, but you have Okongwu at number 9. So why are you lower on Okongwu than others?
Well, like I said about Jalen Smith is based on a lot of the versatility, a lot of the offensive ability, the stretch ability. Okongwu I like a lot too. I think there is a good chance he does become better than a Paul Reed. Like I said, Paul Reed's like kind of a risky pick, a pick you're taking to get a high ceiling. I think Okongwu, I think he's kind of similar in a way. I think Bam is a good comparison for him if he hits his ceiling. I like him as a defender. I like him as a rim runner. I think he can be a plus offensively. I don't think he'll hurt you offensively. I think Bam is a good comp for him. I worry that maybe I put down Tristan Thompson for him and Bismack Biyombo. I worry a little bit if he's just kind of one of those where he'll get you boards, he'll defend, but he's not going to bring you a lot on offense. He's not going to stretch the floor. That's kind of my concern with him. So I think he kind of either becomes like that, like a Tristan Thompson, who's valuable, but he's not incredibly valuable because he can't stay on the floor to stretch the floor necessarily. Or he can become a Bam, who can start distributing, start scoring, start shooting on top of the rebounding and defense. I think that's kind of his range.
Okay. I like him a lot. I think that he's skilled in the low post. I think he has good touch with both hands around the rim. He's still a little raw, but he does have some post moves. Like he does have, a go-to move and a counter. And the difference between him and Bismack is Bismack can't catch. He can't catch a cold. And so
he would have to be pretty mediocre offensively to hit that floor.
Yeah. Bismack, you can't really throw him lobs. And I haven't watched him in a while, so maybe he's improved. But I know 2013-14, I was in Charlotte. And I remember, of course, he was playing behind Big Al, and that was when Big Al had a crazy year. But that was one of the issues that you couldn't throw him a pass. By the time he caught it, he kind of bobbled a little bit, and the defense in the NBA, you only get like a short window. By the time he caught it, bobbled it, loaded up for a shot, it was a foul, and he just wasn't. His hands were awful, and I don't even know how. That was able to get past teams during the draft process. But no, I like Okongwu. Tristan Thompson, I think, is somewhat underrated in the sense. He's obviously won a championship. He probably won't get credit for it because he played with LeBron. An elite rebounder, one of the best rebounders in this era. He can slide his feet, and I think that he's a guy that maybe next year he ends up on a different team, and he really gets a chance to show his value outside of LeBron. So that's not a bad comparison. The Okongwu and Bam comparison, this is interesting to me because, like if we look at Bam that we see today in Miami, we did not know that he had all of this in his toolbox
Not at
at
all.
Kentucky. I didn't know that he could run the offense. I just thought he was going to be a roller, an energy guy that just tries to dunk everything in the post. And so I think if you compared, and I said this on another one, if you compared Okongwu as a freshman and Bam as a freshman and just watch their film side by side, you would think Okongwu was the better prospect. But somehow Miami got something out of him that we didn't know, and he's going to be a perennial all-star going forward.
Absolutely, man. He's a monster.
All right. So, all right, let's go to number 10. And I've mentioned this before. I don't want to see this guy at number 10 because I'm a Blazers fan, and that means he will not be available for Portland. But I like to pick Saddiq Bey at number 10. So, what do you like about Saddiq Bey? Actually, what do you think his position is? Do you think he's a 3 or do you think he's a 4?
I think he's probably a 4. I think they'll play him at the 4 role, but I think he's unique in that he's a distributor. I mean, he can be someone who can play make a little bit too. He's pretty versatile. That's kind of why I like him a lot. Yeah, I guess he's a 4. Man, it's tough because he'll probably be at his peak for sure. He can be almost like a point forward. So it's tough. He's versatile, so he can kind of do a lot. He's probably a 4. I compare him to like a Jay Crowder, um, maybe a Tobias Harris. And that's kind of like a guy who would be a 3 like 10 years ago, and now is a 4. So he's a 4 in the league probably. And I don't know that his ceiling is incredibly high, but I think he checks so many boxes and he does everything at a high enough level that he's going to be a valuable 3-and-D guy who can handle the ball and play big minutes for you for a while. Like, I think he's a classic high floor, kind of low ceiling guy to me.
Yeah, I think he's Jay Crowder with some point guard skills.
Right.
And I mean, he's showing that he's a valuable piece in Miami right now.
Absolutely.
He's playing the 4, and he was the guy that in last night's game that was guarding Kimba on switches late in the game. You're a Celtics fan.
Oh yeah, last night was tough.
So yeah, I like that comparison. Like I said, I want him in Portland, and
He'd fit.
He'd be a perfect fit. But based off of your board, he won't be available. So now I have to try to find someone else. All right. So number 11 is Josh Green. So this is a little bit higher than I've seen on a lot of different lists or mock drafts. So what makes you higher on Josh Green than others?
Yeah, I mean, whenever I talk about Josh Green, I'm pretty much higher on him than whoever I'm talking to. But I just kind of, first of all, I like his shooting form a lot. That's kind of a basic thing, but I think he's just going to come in the league and be a good shooter. I think that he's a good defender. I think he's the classic guy who's like a 3-and-D2 guard. I think like he has his niche pretty much already like ironed out for him when he gets in the league. I think he kind of fits in most offenses because I think he'd be a catch and shoot guy, a guy who plays off the ball. I also don't think he's a guy who, when he has the ball, he's really going to slow down the offense. I think he can kind of handle it enough and play within an offense that he'll be a good scorer that you don't need to rely on for like a high usage rate or anything. And I think he can defend enough that he's valuable. A guy who can shoot at a high level, defend at a pretty high level, and maybe guard positions 1 through 3.
Energy.
That's hard to find. Yeah, I mean that's not something you can just like find easily. I mean, it's hard to find a guy who can check all those boxes. And like we both have been saying, like in the playoffs, we're seeing like guys who are versatile and can do a lot of things are so important.
Yep, and I think this long playoff run or this long evaluation period, I think that his stock may be on the rise as teams watch the playoffs and see how valuable 3-and-D guys are, especially if you can find a 3-and-D guy that can attack a closeout.
Right.
And, you look at, I mean, if part of it could just be their system, but you look at Houston, they have guys that can defend. They have guys that can shoot. They don't really have any, maybe, I guess, depends on what you consider Gordon. They don't have guys that are knockdown shooters, but they're good enough shooters that with volume, they become a threat. But
Yeah.
one of the things that I feel like Houston is missing is a guy that can attack a closeout. So if you give a hard closeout on Covington or Tucker, they're not really going to attack the rim like Daniel
No.
House did. Eric Gordon can on like straight line drives, but I think Houston needs, if they're going to stick to this system, they need a guy like Josh Green who can defend multiple positions, knock down shots, but if you close out, he's a threat to go all the way to the rim.
He's athletic. I mean, he can.
Yeah, he's definitely athletic, but he plays so hard. He plays so hard that it's kind of scary for me because I feel like he's the type that'll get hurt because he's playing so hard and so out of control. Like he goes, as they say, balls to the wall often, and you gotta like that. A guy that you're gonna get maximum effort out of him. But then there's sometimes on his drives, I'm like, that was like, you remember when Dwayne Wade first got to the league, he was so wild and he was so aggressive and he was
Almost too
always
fat.
on the ground. Yeah. And I remember he was the first player that I remember wearing like the football pads, like like the padded compression shorts, and he had all the elbow stuff. And then even Converse made like a whole marketing package or deal when he signed with Converse about all the times how he hits the ground. That's one guy as far as like that. And then Gerald Wallace, in a sense, when they called him Crash, because he played so hard and I think Josh Green has a little bit of that in him as far as just like maximum effort and on one hand it's good, on the other hand it's kind of like, dang, you can't keep hitting the ground 8-9 times a game. Those
No.
bumps and bruises are going to add up. So who do you compare him to?
Well, I've said this before. I kind of see him as like a Gary Harris. I kind of see him as like a Buddy Hield. I mean, the guys you would think when you think like 3-and-D 2 guards. I put down Klay Thompson light. I mean light. I don't think he's going to be Klay Thompson. If I did, he'd be probably the first pick in this draft. But his shot reminds me a little bit of a Klay, and just that ability to get open and off the ball and be a catch and shoot guy kind of reminds me of Klay. So like in play style, I think he kind of reminds me of Klay, not in the ceilings he's going to get to, but he kind of is like a Gary Harris type for me. Is probably most likely like a Buddy Hield, like one of those, like what he'll be at the next level.
So you're really high on his shooting. So you're
I like
higher on
his
his
shooting a lot.
shooting potential than per se his actual shooting numbers.
Yeah, I like
Gotcha.
his form. I like it's clean. That's kind of like I always like guys who get it out comfortably and quick, and I think he does that.
Because I want to say he's like a 36% shooter.
Yeah,
Like I
I
guess when
don't.
I think of Josh Green, I don't think of shooter. You know how like you
No,
hear a
yeah,
guy, you got him in the box. I think of him as 3-and-D, but more so athlete that you can develop into a shooter.
right. No, yeah, I'm. He's definitely an athlete who needs to develop the shooting, but I think his shooting, his form, and just how quick he gets it off, and I see it being it translating at the next level. So we'll see, but I definitely see him being like a knockdown 3-point shooter.
All right. So moving on down to number 12, Patrick Williams.
So I like Patrick Williams. I kind of wrestled with it though, because I try not to get too infatuated with like a 3-and-D 4 who's athletic, because that's just like in today's game everyone wants that, but sometimes that can be someone who just isn't that good, like they're not that valuable. So I have him as a defensive 4, um, who can spread the floor a little bit. I think like his floor is like Lukumba Mute. I mean, I
And,
think he can
and,
be like
and
a 4, shoot threes, but he's not someone you really want in big minutes. But I kind of see a little bit of like a Marcus Morris in him if he can get better at like scoring with the ball, if he can become way more comfortable on offense. That's kind of like, and I put down a Draymond Green. And again, that's one of those cases where maybe in play style more than actually how good he'll be. But I see like a 4 who can stretch the floor a little bit. And if he works in his playmaking, you can be comfortable with the ball in his hands. It's kind of tough to judge playmaking because there's just so many examples of guys who you didn't really see it as much in college, and all of a sudden in the pros, they have it. So it's kind of tough to project that. But I think the most likely one is probably like somewhere in between a Marcus Morris and a Luka Mute, maybe close to Marcus Morris is really good. He'd have to work on his offensive game a lot. But that's kind of the prototype I see for him.
Okay. Yep. All right. So, and then he's so young.
Yeah.
I had somebody on last week, and they weren't high on Florida State guys. They felt like guys from Florida State, and I mean they went all the way back to Chris Singleton, just don't pan out. And so, and it's interesting because they have 2 guys that are projected to go in the lottery, in this year's draft. And I guess when you think of Florida State, it's a basketball school, not a football school.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go down to 13. So this is the biggest shocker, and I guess I've said that 3 times now on this podcast. James Wiseman at 13.
I mean,
this
I
is
know
the lowest I've seen him. This is the lowest I've seen him.
Well, I mean, I almost feel bad because it's like it's not anything. It really isn't anything against him. He's not like a guy who I have a lot of weaknesses for. And it's kind of unfair to him because, I mean, he was supposed to be like 1 or 2 before the season, and now he like just hasn't played, and all of a sudden people are dropping him. So it's kind of like he didn't do anything to drop. I just wonder, even at his ceiling, what that is. Is that something you really want to invest a lot in? I mean, like, again, I think he can be a good starter in the league. I see him as a defensive 5, more of a rim runner. But I have as his floor comp, I have Hassan Whiteside, and I worry that he's just going to be kind of a guy. He can block shots. He can be out there because he can kind of defend, but he isn't much of a plus offensively, and he may kind of be one-dimensional defensively in that he's mostly a shot blocker. I don't know that he'll be – I mean, he's got the athleticism. He's fast. He should be able to switch a little bit, but I just wonder, like, is his ceiling something you really want to invest a lot in? You know what I mean?
And he's a big wild card because all of your concerns are valid, but then we only saw him play 3 games.
Yeah.
And 2 of the 3 games were against
not real games.
Yeah, not real competition. Yeah. So a lot of people are I think, well, in my opinion, if you don't have access to like be able to watch all his USA basketball games or all his AAU games, then I think that a lot of people are ranking him based off of the hype that they saw,
right?
Coming into the season. And then, a lot of people are basing him off of just what they've seen on highlights. And everybody looks good in highlights. Like there's nobody that looks bad in highlights. So he is somewhat of an enigma because the games that he did play, even though the competition wasn't bad, he looked good. He looked, explosive. He was bouncy. He ran the floor. He showed, some flashes of being able to knock down some face-up shots. And the Oregon game, he was in foul trouble, so he really only had like a half to show something. I just think it's tough because he's going to be like LaMelo, to where it's going to be a full calendar year before he plays between his last real game and his first NBA game. But I think that, your concerns are valid because a lot of teams are playing small. And you look at the Eastern Conference Finals, the 2 centers were 6'9" and 6'8". And
I mean, against Toronto, they played OG Anunoby at center against us for like a whole 4th quarter. So,
and that was the game they won.
Yeah, right? It hurt us. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like I said, I see the concerns being valid, but I think, I think there's some people that are a little old school, and they
Yeah.
see his wingspan and they see how he moves and his potential to knock down shots, and they're going to take a flyer on him. But speaking of Whiteside, it's kind of off the subject a little bit. I was thinking of centers that Boston could probably add this summer in free agency, and
What do
I
you think
thought
Whiteside?
I thought he may be really really cheap.
I don't know if I want Whiteside.
Yeah, I just thought maybe for size, because I thought he'll be cheap,
He will
and
be.
but now after watching more and more, I'm like, I don't know if they need him. I mean, I really think that you have something in Robert Williams if he can just figure it out. If he
I'm a big
wants to figure
yeah,
it out,
yeah.
keyword, if he
I'm a big
wants to
Robert
figure it out.
Williams guy. I'd rather just go with him than a Whiteside. Whiteside's a guy to me. I just worry about guys who it's do I even want him in the fourth quarter of a playoff game?
Right.
That's kind of the concern.
Yep. So yeah, all right. So now we're down to number 14, your last lottery pick, and you have Aaron Nesmith. Pretty obvious to understand what you like about Nesmith.
Yeah.
He does what he does. He's a specialist.
Oh yeah.
And so, who do you think he compares to?
So when I watched him, it's interesting because he is a specialist. So I think the first thing you think of is who are the 3-point specialists. Um, he reminds me a lot of Corver in that he's got a little size to him. He's not a small guard who's just shooting threes and that's literally all he can do out there. He's a little bigger, so I think he can defend a bit. So I think Corver's kind of his floor. I think he can just be a knockdown 3-point shooter off the ball, play the 3 position, 2 position, no matter what. I think a Danny Green, because he can defend. And that's the thing. I think Danny Green can he'll defend, and now Danny Green's crazy streaky. So hopefully he's a little more consistent than Danny Green. But the 3-and-D type of Danny Green, and a Buddy Hield maybe, if he really works on polishing his offensive game so he's not just off ball catch and shoot. He's kind of another high floor guy, low ceiling, except his ceiling could get higher if he polishes up his offensive game, because the knockdown off ball shooting is already there times 10. So he already has a niche, he already has a role.
Mm-hmm. So what team do you think would be a good fit for him? And I guess every team needs shooting.
Yeah,
but what team would be your ideal perfect scenario for him?
Well, I'll take him for the Celtics for sure, because you can just never have enough shooting. I think, he's not going to drop too far, so it's tough. But if I'm a team, and again, so they're probably not going to get him, but if I'm a team like the Lakers, I'm just we need guys in here who can shoot, who can defend, and who can just catch open passes from LeBron and just knock them down. Any team who kind of needs that, even Milwaukee, he could fit in well. Again, these are a lot of teams. I think he fits in well with teams that are already good, because he fits in well with the team that just really needs that knockdown guy who can defend. Mm-hmm. So I think he almost fits in better with teams that are going to be at the end of the draft. But yeah, like you said, he kind of fits anywhere. What offense doesn't have a spot for a guy who can come off the ball, knock down threes, and then defend a little bit at the other side,
Right. I think Desmond Bane falls into that range of the teams that you mentioned. And
yeah, Nesmith, I like him too.
Yeah, I think Nesmith will go higher because he's younger. But my best case scenario for Nesmith would be Dallas, even though I don't think he falls that far to 18. But think how crazy that offense would be if you give them another sniper.
Yeah, give Doncic more space. That's just
yeah. You could toy around with lineups with Luka and Seth, and then Hardaway Jr. If one of them is not in, then you can have Nesmith. You can have 2 guys that are coming off pin downs, and that would be tough.
What, 6'7"?
I think they got him at 6'6", 6'7".
He's even a guy. Listen, if he's not, his frame isn't too small. He's even a guy you have him in for 4 minutes as your 4 guy. It's not the end of the world, really.
Oh yeah, especially in playoffs or whatever, and teams are going really, really small. Like I say, Miami's starting 6'6" Jay Crowder at the 4. So they got him listed at 6'6".
Yeah. So I mean, listen, he honestly, if OG Anunoby can play the center position and win a playoff game, he's built similar. I mean, he can play even like through the 4. So yeah, he kind of gives you a lot of versatility too. It helps that he's that knockdown shooter, but he's not JJ Redick, He's not just like he doesn't only have to do one thing.
Yeah. Even though I think JJ is an underrated defender. I mean, I remember like
he's the effort out there.
They had him. He was guarding Harden for a whole series, and I thought he kind of held his own. Yeah, well, man, I appreciate you coming on, and thanks again. Like, tell us a little bit more about your website.
All right. Well, you can find us at tailgatetake.com. You can find us at Twitter at tailgate_take. On Facebook, it's at Tailgate Take. And yeah, we're just a blog it's coming from the fan perspective, man. Just basically the educated fan perspective. Just the normal guys who watch sports, who want to stay updated with sports. Like we have a weekly fan planner that gives you the best games, the biggest games for all different sports for each week or each day in the week, every Monday. We're starting that. So it's really just for the regular fan who wants to read good content, content that sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's a little more serious, but it's coming from fans. So it's the kind of thing that you should be able to relate to. And yeah, it'd be great if anybody could check it out.
All right. Well, cool. Well, thanks again. And I'd like to have you on again, and maybe you can do the second half of your first round, and if you're open to it, a second round. I think that's where it gets a little challenging.
Absolutely, man.
You down for it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm here,
right,
man.
Cool. Yeah, because I want to do a second round because I think that's where you really gotta do a really deep dive into the prospects, and so I think that. I think that's what I'll probably do as we get closer to the draft. I mean, I have like 2 months now, so
you got time, man. So
plenty of time. So all right, well, cool. I'll definitely stay in contact with you, and I look forward to have you on again to do the second half of your first round.
Awesome, man. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. So once again, this is Raphael with my guy Derek, and I am out.